Hello. Welcome me back from the future. You're probably wondering why I was called back to do a reading on this particular occasion. The occasion being that the producers tell me that we received a complaint from someone, not mentioning names. The person complaining was upset because of the use of language by Mr. Peabody. He had some choice words to say, which you will see in chapter, it's in chapter 18. It's the part of the entries that I made known as Captain's Logs. This one being on a Sunday. I made this entry, Captain's Log 20-0018. You'll see it. Chapter 18 starts on page 126 of the book that we all know and love. And today I'm going to be reading the part of the book that the person was complaining about. And fair warning, if you are offended by certain words that are racial slurs, or considered racial epithets or slurs, then you're going to want to either turn down the volume or just turn off the video or what have you, because there are words like that in the book. And to give you a hint, it starts with the letter N and rhymes with Tigger. So if that word offends you, then what can I say? That word appears in the book Huckleberry Finn, which we're also going to talk about a little bit as well today. In that book, I believe it was mentioned 121 times that word was used in Huckleberry Finn. Not sure of the word length, but it's probably not that much bigger than this. Probably doesn't have more words than 2020. In 2020, that particular word appears once. And you're going to hear that in a moment. So, what I'm going to do is, I think this time, I'm going to start by just reading the section of the book in question, about which there was a complaint. I am quoting Peabody, and I want to draw your attention to what they call the copyright page at the beginning of the book, beginning of all books. But our lawyers wanted me to read to you this particular language, nice language, but it's legal language, that appears in the copyright section or page of the book. And it says, "Please be advised that the opinions expressed are those of the characters and should not be confused with those of the author," meaning what Peabody's opinions aren't ours, but to be honest, there's plenty of people that do feel this way. Maybe nowadays they feel a little inhibited in their choice of words. And that is something we're going to discuss a little later in this broadcast. So, anyway, starting at page 130. To give you the setup, this is the part in the book where the boys from the Great Divide, on the other side of the Great Divide is Little Haiti. There's Haitian boys that live there, and they came across what we call the Great Divide, which is Biscayne Boulevard, and into the neighborhood where I was living with my buddy Larry and Art. Needless to say, the three of us are white boys, or white. We're white in color, and the Haitian boys, obviously, not only are they're black, and their skin is dark, but they're also from Haiti, which is an interesting thing, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later as well. You'll notice that I'm starting to digress. Pardon me. Let me finish with the setup. Eventually, the Haitian boys crossed the Great Divide and came into the white neighborhood. And at first there was tension between the white boys and the black boys, the Haitian boys, but eventually they became friends, and not only friends, but they started working together to rebuild their community. In this particular part of the book, they are working on the cheeky that the captain, myself and the crew were working on. You'll be able to find this part of this excerpt in chapter 18, and on the website, if you look at where chapter 18 is subpart H, 18H. This is episode 18H, and you can find more information and some useful links, particularly about the Great Divide, but not in America, in the island of Hispaniola. Interesting. Well, I find it interesting anyway. So anyway, the boys are working on this this place. They're doing this construction together, and you have a mixture of white boys and black boys working together, and it kind of causes a bit of a stir in this the white neighborhood where I lived with Larry and Art. So anyway, here's chapter 18, starting on page 130. People walking in the neighborhood would stop and stare, pointing at the sight of a group of white boys and black boys working like a construction crew, erecting these tall totems on the site of where the remains of my mom's house stood. When we started to thatch the roof, the onlookers, who became more numerous and sometimes would bring lawn chairs to sit and watch, realized we were making a giant cheeky. The thing was encircling the house and providing protection from the sun and the elements. You'll also find information on the website about how to build cheekis and so on. By the time we were done, the driving rain would no longer splash into the house or fly in through the openings where the windows used to be. The sun would no longer be beating down on us mercilessly. The circular hole at the apex of the cheeky would allow smoke from the fire pit and other fumes to exit out of the house and the cheeky. The poles of the cheeky were placed on ground that had been built up, hopefully, high enough to keep out all but the highest of king tides and storm surges that came our way. Not all of the onlookers were appreciative of our work. "What the hell do you boys think you're doing?" It was Peabody. He stood on the street, hands on hips, sweating as usual. Larry was up on the roof with Cousteau and one of his lieutenants. Cousteau was the name of the name of the Haitian boy was actually Jacques, but we started calling him Cousteau because of the Jacques Cousteau. Okay, so whatever. Nicknames abound in this book. It's a book of nicknames. Anyway, Larry was up on the roof with Cousteau and one of his lieutenants. Merci, I think his name was, on account of how he was always saying thank you over and over again for the same thing. The three of them were finishing the thatch work up there, making sure all was tight and secure. Art, or Noha, I should say, was at ground level doing the same thing with the thatch there. Noha's another one of those crazy nicknames in the book. He and a few more of the boys from Haiti, plus a few girls even, were making sure thatch on the sides, which came up about 3 feet from the base of the supporting poles, were secure and mudded in real good. We would eventually shore up the sides with more debris and other materials on hand to create a berm around the cheeky. Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked at the old white guy on the street who was yelling at them. Then they looked at me. Peabody noticed the mask of the ancient ones, which you already know all about, that had been tacked up on one of the poles. He pointed at it. And what the hell is that supposed to be? Not a permit, I can tell you that. This is not sub-Sahara Africa, you know, although from the looks of things you could hardly tell the difference. What are these people doing here anyway? Don't they know that they are supposed to stay on their side of the boulevard? They are helping us. The words drifted down from the roof of the cheeky. And I guess that mask is sort of a permit. We have permission to do what we are doing. Peabody squinted his hand, shielding his eyes from the bright sun bearing down on them. He looked up in the direction of the voice he heard. Pudge? Is that you? What are you doing up there, hanging around with these spear chuckers? Didn't I tell you to stay away from them and this nigger lover? He nodded in my direction. The words hit everyone like a ton of bricks. They were met by stunned silence. You need to get your fat ass off that thing you are standing on and get home. Maybe get some religion while you are at it. Larry stood stock still for a good long while. He was anything but a pudge. That used to be his nickname, by Peabody anyway. All the work we had been doing in the wake of the big one and building a huge cheeky in the hot Florida sun over the past few days had him well on the way to becoming the bear of a man he would someday be. I think I saw him flex his sinews for a moment as he stood there, shirtless, skin darkened from the sun. Not quite defiant, but almost. I promised I would do the work as agreed and as an honorable man would do according to the scriptures. I have to finish what I started just like I promised. Isn't that what you have always been preaching about all this time? Don't sass me, boy. You have to mind your elders too, you know. That is in the scriptures as well. And don't think just because you are family that we will be letting you slide on this crazy African thing you and these miscreants are building. That voodoo mask over there ain't no legal permit, and I am sure interested in seeing whatever paperwork you may have that makes any of this legal. Now, I suggest you come down from there after you help clear up this big mess you and your new Jungle Bunny friends made of the place. Peabody turned away and stalked back down the road. He probably was thinking he would need some reinforcements. The onlookers did not seem too happy about what they had just seen and heard. They glanced back and shook their heads as they left. Merci, merci, someone called out from the roof. Merci, monsieur. There was a murmur of chuckles. Then everyone looked over at me for a minute or two. Then we all went back to work. All right, so those are the words. I'm sure you've picked up on a few of them, about which the complaint was lodged. The complaint being as follows, and I quote, The explicit use of racial slurs and hateful language, clearly intended to demonstrate their hurtfulness, feels gratuitous. Then the person writing this goes on to say, the apparently surprising sight of a mixed-race group working harmoniously together feels more 1920s than 2020s. And then she goes on to criticize other cliches and words that I use. I'm sorry, that's my language. It's the reviewer is right. There are cliches and words throughout the book that seem dated, but that's part of the point. If you read through it, I am aware that my language, especially in the future, when these things like hooskow, candy striper, and all these words, these dated phrases, in fact, is a topic of conversation between myself and Angela, because she's looking at me and saying, "Why are you saying that for? You know, what is that supposed to mean? Kill two birds with one stone was one. Why would anybody kill a bird to begin with? You know." So anyway, whatever. Okay. So, what is the complaint? The sum and substance of the complaint. So, we're going to discuss that now, and I am going to probably be saying the N-word again. I basically have to, and in order to explain this better, because obviously it needs explaining. If you recall, if you want to rewind the tape a little, or go to that page of the book, the N-word appears once in the book. I just read that part of it. And while the person that wrote this says, clearly intended to demonstrate their hurtfulness, that's not really true. What is the particular word is used not to denigrate the Haitian boys, because Peabody wasn't talking to them, and he was talking to Larry, and he was referring to me, not as a nigger, but as a nigger lover. So it wasn't intended to be hurtfulness. It's not being, the words were not being used to demonstrate that they're hurtful to the Haitian boys. Obviously, because I'm not Haitian, and that wasn't that wasn't Peabody's point. And thus, the producers asked me to come down and explain this, although I feel sort of like it's similar to someone trying to explain a joke. If you say something, a joke, and people don't laugh, and then you have to explain why it's funny, they're not going to get it. Okay, so I guess what I'm trying to say in a polite way is that the person that wrote this didn't really get it. And so the person is too focused on, oh my God, it's the N-word, and not really, that's so hurtful. I get it, it's hurtful. Why do you have to keep saying it? Okay, that's because that's not, like I said, it ain't the point. So, kind of gets us back to the Great Divide. There's an interesting piece on the internet. The link is on our website at 18H. You'll find it. And it links over to a piece that someone did about the island of Hispaniola, where on the western half, the western part of the island is Haiti. And on the eastern half of the island, it is Dominican Republic, all part of the island of Hispaniola. There's a divide between these two countries. The demographics of the two are extremely similar. although Dominican Republic is they speak Spanish more because they were colonized. That part of the island was colonized by Spain, and there's a long history that you'll hear more about if you access this. Which, by the way, this and other useful materials will appear on the thing down there somewhere in the description for this video. And there should be some on the let's see, which side is it? It's over there. Maybe it's over there. Wherever it is, on the side of wherever your suggested videos are on YouTube. So anyway, the Great Divide on the island of Hispaniola, where the demographics of the island itself, with respect to the two nations, are they're black people. Okay, they're black or very brown people. Yet there is a divide between them, and the circumstances in Haiti are so radically different from those in the Dominican Republic. And there is more than a small amount of discrimination by the Dominicans between the two parts of the island. And so when you look at the demographics, would you really say that it is a race issue? Is it really a race issue? And maybe it is to some extent, but it's not. It's really the cultural and socioeconomic differences between the two places. So whereas there's a road down the middle of Hispaniola that divides the island into two factions, two groups that are one's the other. You have the one the over there. There's one. Where's the other one? It's that Great Divide exists there, and in Miami, the Great Divide is Biscayne Boulevard, where on the west side of the boulevard, again, the Haitians end up on the west side, and then on the east side is the white neighborhoods. And so, but in this particular neighborhood, as you can tell from the book, the neighborhood that Art and Larry and I lived in with my mom, and that Peabody lived in, was not, it was strong, it was economically it was more, had more than the people on the other side of the Great Divide did. But when the storms came, and I hope this is not a spoiler alert, you've probably already read the book, so it won't be. When the storms came, the cavalry did not. And that included our neighborhood. And Peabody, throughout this part of the book, is trying to first of all, he's trying to maintain the separateness from them, the other over there, and thought, and it kept explaining to his people on the white side of the neighborhood why it was that the federal government, the government was not coming to their assistance. They were very slow to help them, and his explanation is, well, they're too busy helping other people that are more important than us, but our time will come. But that turned out not to be the case, and eventually it became apparent that the neighborhood where I was living and where Peabody was the president of the association didn't have the status, the socioeconomic status. They were not in the caste system, they were not high enough on the rung of the ladder to merit any assistance from the powers that be. And keep in mind, the resources are scarce. And if you remember, it was even before this that there was a hurricane that hit I forget the name of it, because we don't name hurricanes anymore in the future. But it hit Puerto Rico, and it's an island nation. I don't think I need to describe to you the socioeconomic class of the people living there, not to mention they tend to be brown people. The government was very, very slow to come to their assistance, and they suffered grievously for quite a bit of time. Meanwhile, I think it was the same year, or just not that long before this, was another hurricane that hit what we call the Houston Swamp. And there was assistance there lickety split, and I'll leave it to you to guess why that might be. So, the Great Divide is really the use of the language is not intended to hurt the feelings of the people living in Little Haiti. As a matter of fact, you can tell from the Merci that the Haitian boys, their command of the English language is not that great to begin with, in general, but they certainly, given their background, are going to have a hard time understanding what these phrases mean, because they're not familiar with the history of racism and slavery in the United States and Jim Crow and all those other things. They are refugees from Haiti, and so they don't even know what he's talking about when he's using these phrases. And like I said, they're not directed at hurting their feelings. They're directed at separating the white boys from the black boys and making them feel like the white boys should not be cavorting with these black boys that need to be on the other side of the Bouldevard. So that explains a little bit about the use of the language. It's not gratuitous when I say what Peabody said, because he said it. And this is the way people like him that think like him talk. And really, what he's saying, the words that he's using, isn't really the bad part. It's not the point. It's what a person is thinking. And unfortunately, comments such as this is just driving it underground. It's the use of this language is being driven underground by freaking out every time you hear the N-word, which I'm not even able to say, because it's a taboo word. You're not allowed to say it, especially if you're a white guy like me. So I'm not allowed to say that word. And so that brings up Tom Sawyer, who wrote Huckleberry Finn. Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn. That book was, when it came out in 1885, I believe it was roundly criticized for the language that was used then, but not really so much of that it was they were racial slurs. That part didn't seem when I read the materials, and you'll see some of it down there. The librarians who didn't like the language because it was coarse and it depicted the Huck Finn as being uneducated and coarse, and you're so look at. They didn't like the way that the white boy was being depicted, and the coarseness of the language is what bothered them, not the racial connotations that it may or may not have meant in a particular context. After all, it's a common phrase. The N-word's a common phrase that was used back in that day, and I don't think anybody really disputes that. But So, but they just didn't like it was too uneducated, and this guy, Mark Twain, he's bringing us down to a coarser level, and the language he uses was coarse. But then, apparently, they missed the whole point that the book, which is considered like one of the great American novels of all time, is kind of a satire, or it's a definitely a commentary on slavery. So in that in the book, which I recommend that you read it or read about it, there's a white boy in it, and he befriends and assists a runaway slave named Jim. And so that is what the book really focuses on, is not the use of the N-word by people around there. It really, the point of the book is the way in which a white boy is conflicted morally between what he has been taught as a member of the on the east side of the Great Divide, as a member of the white ruling classes, to view black men and black people as slaves and property, not as actual humans. And so therefore, being with Jim and helping him escape was morally wrong from that point of view. So he's conflicted. Oh, am I doing something wrong here? But his inner moral sense about the idea that you can own a person, and the way that Jim was treated, and the whole concept, that's really of slavery, and people looking at the other as something other than human. So that's really what the book is about. It's not about, oh my God, he's using the N-word, and so he's a racist. That Samuel Clemens was a racist. Okay, it's like the opposite. But anyway, that leads me to one last thing that I wanted to show you, and that is this piece. Whoops. Behind me, I don't know if you've noticed that piece over there, over there. Okay, I'm gonna go get it. I've probably been looking at that and wondering, what's that? Excuse me, Pablo. I'm just gonna borrow this for a second. Sam. Okay. So. If you're looking at this, you can see it's a African woman, right? You're looking at it, but African woman. No, it's not an African woman. It's an African man, or it's an African woman. So here she is. Here she is. Does she see the man? And does the man see the woman? But even if they did, would they see that they're really the same? They're really they're one and the same. It's all you're not. Oh, look at her! Oh, look at him! Oh, look at her! Look at him! The other is not. Is really you. It's you. If you look at it that way, if you can truly empathize with a person, you can see them. You can see yourself in them. Let's put it that way. And so that is my very esoteric point of today's lesson. I hope that it proved to be a good teaching moment for you. again, it's, you go to the website 2020labook.com. It should be there on your screen somewhere. And you go scroll over to part 4, I think it is, of the book. Has chapter 18, and then if you click hyperlink from the chapter 18, it'll eventually take you to 18H, where you'll get more information about what the heck I'm talking about. Okay, thank you very much, and so put her back. And I'm going to do something that I normally don't do, and that is I'm going to put the captain away for a second, so that I can have less of a G-rated conversation with you. I did check, and I saw there was a version of Huckleberry Finn in 1960 that was 1960, and I heard the guy use the N-word, which is kind of surprising. I don't know if newer versions of Huckleberry Finn would use that word, or if it's now not allowed. And I'm gonna just let my hair down, so to speak, and tell you something that's more personal as I rip the hair out of my head, to explain something about this whole issue of the use of racially charged words like the N-word, which I'm about ready to say it, and it's going to be very emphatic, so if you're offended by that, if you're offended by police officers beating a man of color nearly to death while shouting a racial slur at him, then you wanna change the channel, because there's this. Back in the 80s, I was a civil rights attorney, and I handled a particular case called Brown versus City of Hialeah et al. You can find the case hopefully around here somewhere in the below section, or you can look it up, or you can go to the website and check it out. But here's the story of the case and why I'm bringing it up now. In the case, there was, as I said, there was a police beating of a black man, and it was captured on tape. There's a long story why that came to be. Mr. Brown was not behaving himself, let's put it that way. And but anyway, during the trial of the case, the first trial of the case, the judge, for reasons that were never explained, excluded the N-word screamed by the police officer. He excluded that from the trial. He did not allow the jury to hear that word was said, plus another word starting with C, which I'm gonna, another word. It was the word coon. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's kind of an archaic phrase, but a lot of times, during this incident, the officer referred to Mr. Brown as a coon, and so that is considered a racial slur. I don't know where it comes from, but anyway, it is what it is. These words are spoken by people who have racial animus in their heart, including members of the police department. This was City of Hialeah Police Department. So anyway, the judge excludes this word, and instructs all the witnesses that they can't talk about it, they cannot say it. And the judge, I mean, this is a judge during a trial, and he never gives an explanation as to why or on what. We have an evidence code. Certain evidence is admissible, some is not. He never gives a reason why he excluded that N-word from the trial. So anyway, on appeal, it went to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals in Atlanta, Georgia, and we briefed the issue. This is the central issue of the entire case, and we have oral arguments, and so I am there. I appear for oral arguments in this large courtroom, and there, sitting on the bench, are three distinguished jurists in the hallowed halls of the Court of Appeals, Federal Court of Appeals, and the senior judge was a judge by the name of Joseph Hackett. He's since retired from the bench. He's practicing law at a firm in Tallahassee. He's quite elderly now. Well, probably shouldn't say that, but sorry, Judge Hackett. But anyway, he's a man of color and very distinguished-looking man in the center, with two white guys on the sides, two white judges, and so I'm there giving oral argument, and I'm looking around. I'm like fumbling around when I get to this part where I'm trying to explain what the police officer said, and then finally Judge Hackett, he looks at me and he goes, "Mr. Clark, it's okay, you can say it." And I did. And I quote, I said, "Okay. Did you get that, nigger? Kill him! Kill him! Kill him! Get him! Get him! Kill him! Kill that son of a bitch!" And then you hear, "No, no, no, please!" as Mr. Brown was pleading for his life. And then according to Judge Hackett's opinion, the rest of the tape is inaudible. Or that part, the ensuing part of the tape is inaudible, which is basically they're beating Mr. Brown nearly to death, and so that's what you hear: sounds of getting beaten up by a bunch of white police officers. So anyway, I said it just like that during oral arguments, and Judge Hackett, and the look of surprise on his face. Maybe it was because it wasn't the word. It wasn't the word. I used the N-word. "Oh my God, Mr. Clark said the N-word." It was that I repeated it, and I said it exactly as that police officer said it. And the impact of it was, had to be, that was really, it wasn't even so much what he said, it's the way that he said it, and the intent that it conveyed. And I mean, it's violence towards another human being. It's racial, and kill him, get him, kill him. No, no, please. That's the human face of it. So I thank Judge Hackett for giving me permission to say the N-word, and if you look up the case, he uses it too. He doesn't say did you get that? Fill in expletive delete. He writes the word Nigger question mark right there. Okay, in a published opinion in the Federal Reporters of the Law Book. And just to be clear, he also reprints the word coon in a footnote. Footnote number 1. If you're interested, you can go in and see that that it's okay to use that word. It's not being used gratuitously or not trying to hurt someone's feelings. The jury, or was the judge trying to spare their feelings by alarming their fine sensibilities over the fact that a white police officer is screaming a racial slur as he and his fellow white police officers are trying to kill with their bare hands. Well, they're committing acts of violence against a black man. So these are the issues that are really involved. At this point in time, it is June 8th. It just so happened that this controversy about the use of racial words in this book 2020, that book was published or was written, finished writing it 2 years ago in the past, and this complaint about the use of racial slurs happened before a incident that took place, I guess it was about 2 weeks ago, whereby yet another black man was killed by the police during an act of violence, and that sparked protests throughout the United States and the world, and could be that has helped to turn the tide, and now we are going to deal with some things, not just about the police department, but about race relations. So should we not allow white people such as myself to use these words in depicting what a racist says? How can you if you have a character in a book that's a racist, how can you avoid using racial words? It's not gratuitous, it's just the way that they speak. And if you don't believe me, go look up this case. This is the way people talk that are racists. It does happen. They use words like coon and nigger and jungle bunny and all these other things. They don't do it when people are around. They're thinking, and that's another point, is it's what they're thinking. It's what these people are thinking, and you're inhibiting them from coming out and doing their skinhead thing because they're not allowed to use the word N-word on TV. But when no one's looking, then they do it. They are going to express that. And so that leads to one final point about some of the commentary directed at Huckleberry Finn in particular, because it's I think they said every year it's banned by somebody else. It's 135 years or so later, and it still is controversial. And part of the controversy has inhibited authors from presenting a point of view that is not consistent with their color of their skin. So I'm white. I'm a white guy. I'm not allowed to talk about black people, indigenous people. I'm not allowed to create characters like that because I don't know what it is. I'm not a woman, and here I have one of the main characters in 2020 is a woman who is a woman of color and is part Native American from the islands. So I'm not allowed to put words in her mouth, give her action, and that's really hard in a book. Any book where you only have one character who's the same color as you, or maybe the other You know what I'm saying? It's not. I think they call it authentic voices, which I never heard of until after I had written this book. And my sister tells me, she's an author, and she's saying, "Oh, wow, you're not allowed to present a point of view of anyone other that doesn't share your gender or your sexual orientation or your color of your skin or your nationality or anything." So I know I'm overstating it a bit, but that's was amongst the other criticisms of Mark Twain. Well, that was pretty much shouted down, but they said, "You're just a white guy. How do you know what it's like?" But let's think about that for a second, because you are a witness. He was a witness. Samuel Clemens was, to events and things and the way people were, the way that people talked, and the whole experience at a time when slavery was still, we were struggling with slavery, but it still existed, and so he's incapable of painting a portrait of it by creating these characters based on real life, saying real words, because he doesn't look like all the other characters, all the other people that were part of that experience. Slave owners, people in the Underground Railroad, slaves themselves, men, women, children, white boys that are maybe conflicted, maybe not, about the whole thing. So if you're going to paint that picture, how can you not give voice to characters that don't look like you? Because there is no person that is black and white and male and female and from the islands and from, you know what I'm saying? So that's of concern, and I don't think that that is a valid basis for criticism of a book like 2020. If anything, you wouldn't say, "Hey, he's using words that are hurting people's feelings." If anything, you would say that it, and I'm going to be honest here, that it gives a unrealistic view of white boys and black boys working together. And the person that wrote the comment was like incredulous, saying, "What do you mean? It sounds more like that people are surprised that you see white and black people working together. That's more like the 1920s, not the 2020s." But you know, it's unfortunate she made that comment, because it wasn't that long after that the rioting broke out, and it reveals how some people think that we're all in this together, and with this idea that it would be shocking to see white boys and black boys working together in the 2020s. Yeah. We're just now, in this year, 2020, starting to get it a little bit. We've got long ways to go. So, in the hearts and minds of many people, like Mr. Peabody, yes, it is it's not a shocking sight. It's just that it bothers them, because they don't want, they want the black people to stay on their side of the boulevard and the white people stay over on this side. It does bother them. So it's not crazy for a work of literature such as this to show how some people are going to react with concern and alarm, or whatever you want to call that, at a group of white boys working together towards a common goal, rebuilding their communities together with one another, because they find that they have to do that. You have to do it in order to survive. You have to do that, or is that really unrealistic and idealistic to look at things that way and to imagine that that could be something that could happen. So, anyway, see, where's my soapbox? Oh, wait, I left it over there. I need to get off it, figuratively. And thank you for your patience in listening to my ramblings. And I hope that you're able to tune in at another episode of featuring the captain. He's a lot nicer than me. I like him, even if his words are a little, hokey, like hooskow. Never heard the word hooskow?